You've introduced legislation, bipartisan legislation, out of the House Financial Services Committee that would really allow for Chinese firms to have to comply with some of the rest of the transparency regulations that U.S. companies and other countries regulated on the exchanges have to abide by.
Yes, I chair the subcommittee on investor protection and capital markets. This is a bill that had overwhelming support in the Senate. I've been working on this for a long time, but now politically is the time to move it. We ought to provide protection to American investors when they're investing on an American stock exchange. It's not just about China. As it happens, Belgium is also going to be affected by this as well.
You said now is the time politically. Why now? Why now?
Well, elements of the Republican Party close to the business community just wanted business to go on as usual. Business community usually wants business to go on as usual. And then President Trump determined that she had not been truthful about the COVID virus, and all of a sudden that level of Chinese support is no longer as politically significant.
You know, in just the next hour or so, President Trump is anticipated to give a press conference, and one of the topics that is expected to come up is the U.S. relationship with China pertaining to Hong Kong. This is just one of the many policies, bipartisan policies, that lawmakers such as yourself have really been pushing for. What are some other tools that you think enjoy bipartisan support to respond to China?
Well, just yesterday we passed a bill focusing on the Uyghurs and imposing sanctions on those Chinese entities and people that have 1 million Uyghurs in detention camps right now. And Congressman Yoho and I, a former chair, and he's the ranking member of the Asia Subcommittee, will be introducing legislation soon on Hong Kong. There are others working on that as well. It's amazing how many different moving elements there are. This is more of a technical matter. When you invest money on a U.S. stock exchange, you should have the protections that the Sarbanes-Oxley bill, which I worked on almost 20 years ago, provides you. Namely, you get audited financial statements, and then there's an audit of the auditors. And it is that second step that China is preventing, and that's why you had companies like Luckin Coffee wildly overstate their earnings, and now it looks like there'll be some criminal indictments.
It sounds like it's about honesty and transparency.
Yeah, and we should not have lower standards for Chinese companies seeking American capital than American companies. You know, all things being equal, I would hope American investors would invest in American companies.
You mentioned that you're working with Congressman Yoho on the issue of Hong Kong. What can we expect bipartisanship coming out of Congress as it relates to Hong Kong?
Well, first, a clear statement that we stand with the people of Hong Kong. And I traveled there and met with the pro-democracy leaders years ago. And we've passed many pieces of legislation to put us on the right side of history. The next issue is, will we treat Hong Kong as autonomous when Beijing does not treat it as autonomous? And what elements of the preferences we've given Hong Kong as opposed to the rest of China will we continue to provide?
And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo sending a letter to lawmakers this week and saying that he doesn't believe that Hong Kong is able to enjoy that independence given China's actions. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's clear that Hong Kong still has some more autonomy than any other part of China. But it's clear that that is being rolled back, and it's a two-step process. They've had their rubber stamp parliament approve it, but then the Communist Party has got to act on it. But it's clear that they are locked into the idea of diminishing Hong Kong's autonomy, and we need to diminish the effect that we give what is now diminished autonomy.
And how do you do that with U.S. allies?
Well, a number of countries have stepped forward, particularly Britain, who signed the agreement with China late last century that turned Hong Kong back over to a one country, two systems. And I think quite a number of countries around the world are going to diminish, if not eliminate, any disparate treatment they give Hong Kong as opposed to any city in China that it has no autonomy at all.
We are living, I don't have to tell you this, Congressman, we are living in an incredibly polarized time. Mm-hmm. But this appears to be the one issue where Republicans and Democrats are united.
Well, there is a range of opinion, pro-business, elements of the pro-business wing of the Republican Party have been very reluctant to do anything with regard to China. And there is also a tendency in Democrats to simply want to do the opposite of whatever Trump tweeted. And the fact is that Hong Kong is being oppressed, the Uyghurs are being oppressed, investors are not being protected. And that's true even if Trump says it's true.